Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah, and I'm part of the team here at Test Innovators. And the focus of today's webinar is studying for the SSAT and the ISEE, or rather specifically the ISEE over winter break. To start, I'd like to share a little bit about what we do here at Test Innovators. We've helped over 150,000 students prepare for entrance exams and get into the most selective schools. We also work with many tutoring companies, educational consultants, and schools. All right, without further ado, let's dive into the content of today's webinar. So today we will be covering general preparation guidelines, tips for effective practice, overall test strategies, section-specific strategies, and test day advice. So this webinar is being recorded, and I will send out a copy of the recording to all registrants after the webinar. We're also live streaming on Facebook today, so you can also catch a copy of this recording on our Facebook page. Throughout the webinar, for those of you on Zoom, please feel free to type questions in the Q&A. If we have time at the end, I will answer those questions, but if there are any I don't get to, I'll be sure to email you a response along with the webinar recording. First, let's discuss general preparation guidelines. Now, this can apply not just to the ISEE, but pretty much any standardized test. So you're gonna wanna, first thing you do, take a full-length practice test. Make sure the test is accurate, provides normative scoring, and tracks timing information. Taking a practice test, no matter when your official test date is, will give you familiarity with the test style, difficulty, and content so that you know what to expect when you take the real test. Next step, review the results. The review process is possibly the most important step in your test prep. This is the place where you're going to learn the most. So you want to find trends in subject areas that need work. That is, identify the areas that need the most improvement. Also make note of the areas you've done well. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back through the test and review every question you answered incorrectly or skipped. Read the answer explanation and make sure you know how to do that question if you were to see something similar again. I also recommend, reviewing questions that maybe you guessed on, or that you think you knew how to do, but you weren't exactly sure. So it's also important to make sure you can do those questions again. If you do see them again in the future, something similar in the future. Then you want to learn test taking strategies to help you understand how to arrive at the correct answer and how to avoid choosing any of the wrong answers. Step 3, do targeted practice. So you want to focus on areas that could use the most work based on your practice test results. So, you've identified what you need to work on, then you're going to practice to focus on those areas. You want to practice those specific question types until you're confident. And then once you feel confident with those skills, step 4, repeat. So repeat steps 1 to 3 until test day. So just to recap, step 1, take a full-length practice test. Step 2, review the results. Step 3, do targeted practice. Step 4, repeat. So you're going to keep doing full-length practice tests. So one recommended study schedule that we have is to do 1 practice test a week and complete the recommended practice exercises in between. This is particularly excellent if you have a lot of time to prepare. But no matter how much time you're using to prepare, it's definitely, you want to do the practice test, review it, do some targeted practice, And then, go back and take another practice test, see what you've improved, see what you still need to do, and just go through the whole thing again. Okay, next we're going to go over some tips for effective practice. First of all, don't forget to take a break. Relaxation and sleep are important so that your brain can function effectively when you're working. So one thing that is actually great, both for studying and for relaxing, is reading. So reading will help you build a strong vocabulary and will strengthen your reading comprehension skills. It's also relaxing. So I always think it's a great idea to, pick up something you enjoy, a book, or, if you're really into a certain subject area, articles, that kind of thing, and make sure you're reading regularly as you're preparing for this test. So it doesn't really matter so much what it is, but just make sure it's something you're interesting and enjoyable too, and that will help you with the relaxation side of things. And then, just the more reading you do, I think the better as you're preparing for these exams. Okay, next tip, practice a little bit each day or every day. So frequent shorter sessions are more effective than one long practice session. So give yourself a break between, practicing. So if you're, on a more limited study timeline because you're trying to prepare over winter break, still make sure you're giving yourself breaks from studying. So you're not just, sitting down and trying to study for hours at a time. That sort of becomes a game of diminishing returns after a while. So make sure you're giving yourself breaks. And it's great to get on a schedule. So you want to incorporate practice into your schedule. So it becomes a habit, it becomes part of your routine. You want to, even if it's just, a little bit here and there, you want to work it into your schedule. Okay, now we're going to discuss the various ways you can actually take the ISEE. So there's several ways you can take it. There are both paper and online options. You're going to want to make sure you check what options are available in your area by visiting the ERB website at erblearn.org. ERB is the official testing body of the ISEE, and they will have the most up-to-date information about the availabilities in your area. It's good to know that the paper and online versions of the tests have the same structure and content, but of course the format is different. And so how you take the test is slightly different too. Therefore, how you prepare for each format is going to be slightly different. So if you're taking the test on a computer, you're going to want to do computer-based preparation. If you're taking the test on paper, then it makes sense to do paper-based practice. Okay, so next we'll discuss some overall test strategies. This is a big one, process of elimination. So remember that the ISEE is a multiple choice test. So the correct answer is there. So don't forget to use the answer choices to help you find the correct one. Which means if you don't know the correct answer, a great place to start is to start eliminating the ones that you know are wrong. Eliminating wrong answer choices will increase your chance of choosing the correct answer, even if you end up having to randomly guess. So you're going to be therefore making an educated guess, but it's much better to make a guess between 2 possible choices rather than 4 possible choices. So process of elimination is a great place to start. Another big one is time management. Using your time effectively is critical. Remember that every correct answer gives you the same number of points. That is to say, you get 1 point for every question you answer correctly. So 1 point for every question you answer correctly. So your goal is to answer as many questions correctly as possible in the time you're given. So don't waste valuable time on hard questions when you could instead answer 3 easy questions correctly in the same amount of time. So your first step will be to group questions by difficulty, easy and hard. Every time you read a question, ask yourself, do I know how to do this? So on the ISEE, questions, except for those in the reading section, generally go in order of difficulty, easy to hard. Of course, everyone's a little different. So you're going to want to ask yourself, do I know how to do this every time you read a question? And then, classify it as easy or difficult for you. So if you know how to do a question, if the answer is, do I know how to do this? If your answer is yes, absolutely, then go ahead and do the question. But if your answer is maybe, or I'm not really sure about this, mark an answer for the question and circle it in your test booklet. If you're taking a paper test, you want to circle it in your test booklet and come back to it later. We'll mention this in a second, but marking an answer helps you avoid having your bubbling sheet get off on your answer sheet if you're taking a paper test. So it's particularly important here. But otherwise, just marking an answer, you're not, you get 0 points for incorrect answers and 0 points for skipped answers. So you might as well just put something in there as a placeholder. So if you don't have time to come back to it later, you at least have a shot of getting the right answer there. So, okay. So for this section, you answer all of the questions that are easy for you first. And as we mentioned, questions do go in order of difficulty, easy to hard, but make sure you answer the questions that are easy for you first, and then go back to the questions you skipped. So, and that's after you've gone through the whole section, answered all the questions that are easy for you, go back to the more difficult questions and work on those. And that'll help you sort of use your time the most efficiently possible for you as you're taking the test. Okay, so skipping questions, again, very important part of the time management strategy, but particularly if you're taking the paper test, be very careful with your bubble sheet. You don't want to skip question number 5, but if you forget to skip question number 5 on your bubble sheet, you could end up with, the wrong answers on each line. So be very careful with that when you're skipping. Just make sure that you're, answering the correct question on your bubble sheet. So just double check that whenever you skip a question, if you're taking the test on paper. You also want to answer every question. As I mentioned, the ISEE does not penalize you for guessing. So you get 1 point for every correct answer, 0 points for every incorrect answer, and 0 points for every skipped question. So you might as well answer every question, even if you don't know the answer. So best off just filling in a random choice for something that you're skipping and coming back to later. And if you have time to do it, you can always change your answer. Okay, next we're going to go over helpful strategies for each section of the test, starting with verbal strategies. So the preparation strategy for the verbal section in part depends on the amount of time you have to prepare. So one great thing to do is you can study vocabulary and learn root words. This is especially great if you have a lot of time. Just make sure the vocabulary you use is at the appropriate level. Learning root words such as Latin and Greek roots can be really beneficial because they show up in a lot of different words. So that can be very helpful as well. However, if you only have a short amount of time to prepare, your time's best going to be spent practicing some strategies. And this is a great one. So think of your own answer first and then eliminate the wrong answer choices. This will help you sort of avoid answer choices that can look tempting but be wrong. So it's really great to think of your own answer choice first, and your own answer first, and then eliminate wrong answer choices. So if you have a limited amount of time, try practicing this strategy. It can make a big difference. And for sentence completion, same thing. You want to think of your own answer first. So try filling in the blank before looking at the answer choices. Okay, so there are also several helpful strategies for the math questions, which you should definitely incorporate into your preparation, no matter how much time you have before your test. First thing, read the question carefully and underline important information. So this includes words and numbers, indicating quantities, relationships, calculations, units. Units are very important. All the things that you'll need to answer the question. So, underline or use the highlight function on the computer test. So for some questions, and this is a great strategy, the jumping off point can actually be in the answers. So you can substitute the answer choices for an unknown quantity in the question to see which answer is correct. So for this, I always recommend starting with the middle answer choice because it can often help you minimize the number of answers you have to substitute. So if you've started with the middle choice and you find that, oh, it didn't work, I clearly need a smaller number, then you have to substitute these smaller options. You don't really have to go with the larger quantities there. It can be great to practice estimation. So, when you first read a question, before you really get into the math, if you have a sense of, the ballpark of where you think the answer should be, that can help you, particularly if the answer choices have a big range. So if it's going to be closer to 10 or 10,000, it can help you sort of narrow that down if you know roughly what the answer should be. Sometimes the math questions can seem very challenging to solve abstractly, particularly given the time limits. So in cases like these, it can be helpful to use actual numbers to determine the answer. Finally, and this is important, you want to check that you answered the given question. So for every problem after you finish solving, look back at what the question was asking you to find and make sure that it actually matches your answer. So if the question was asking you to solve for X, make sure you solve for X. But if the question was asking you to solve for X plus 6, then make sure that you've given the answer for X plus 6 and not X. Okay. On to the reading section. So the most important rule of the reading comprehension section is that the passage will always provide all of the information needed to answer the question. So if any part of an answer choice doesn't match the information given in the passage, it is incorrect. So you're going to want to make sure you found evidence in the passage for the answer choice you select. And the next strategy goes with our strategies for the verbal section. So whenever possible, after you read a question, try to come up with an answer choice before you look at the answer choices. This is really helpful because it will help you eliminate wrong answer choices and find the best answer. And then in general, you want to avoid answer choices that are too extreme. If you see answer choices with words like only, always, never, or other extreme words, these are unlikely to be the correct answers. So you should only choose them if you're absolutely sure that the sentiment is in the passage as well. So be careful with extreme answer choices. Finally, we have the writing section. So the writing portion of the ISEE is not scored, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare for it. Remember, the admissions departments will receive a copy of your essay along with, or of your writing sample along with the score report. So they're going to be seen, they just won't receive a numerical score. So you are going to want to choose a topic that showcases something you care about and are familiar with. Remember to write in a way that shows you in a positive light. This is your chance to show the school who you are, outside of academics. There's only a limited amount of time to write. So managing your time effectively is incredibly important, for this section as well as the others. So for the writing section, you're going to want to spend the first 2 to 5 minutes outlining your work. After you have a plan, go ahead and get writing. This is where you'll spend most of your time. You'll need to watch the clock and save yourself 2 to 5 minutes at the end for review. So your essay should have a clear focused topic that directly answers the given question. And this is one reason why it's definitely worth it to spend those first 2 to 5 minutes outlining. You want to make sure you have, focus and organization. It should be structured much like the essays you've written in school, with an introduction, 2 or 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. So you want to present structured and organized writing. And your writing should include examples and specific details that make your writing come alive. Okay, lastly, let's go over some advice for test day. And once we do that, I will get to your questions that you guys have asked so far. Okay. So the day before the test, it's really important to relax. Don't try to cram in last minute practice. Exercise is a great way to relieve stress, and it will help you sleep well. It's best to gather everything you need on test day the night before. That way you don't forget anything and you aren't rushed the day of. So always good to gather everything up the night before. I tend to think that at least it would help me sleep better. I always sleep better if I'm traveling one day, and if I'm all ready to go to the airport, I sleep better than if I'm trying to pack at the last minute. So it's the same thing with a test. You want to make sure you have everything you need the night before. Finally, and this is really important, you want to get good sleep, not just the night before, but the entire week before the test. And one of the things about studying over winter break is, I think, part of the study plan, if you're studying over winter break, should be to get enough sleep. It's a great time to catch up on sleep, as well as a great time to study. So make sure to get a lot of sleep. It's, I think, sometimes a undervalued part of the process for studying. It's very, very important. Okay, so if you're testing in person, you're going to want to bring the following to the test center. First and foremost, should definitely add this, and this is incredibly important to do now, is you're going to want to check the COVID safety requirements for your testing site. These may be changing. With all the recent news, it's just really important that you're double checking that you have the most up-to-date information about what's required for COVID regulations. And obviously this is going to vary depending on what state and city you're in. So make sure you're up to date on what's required there. You're going to need a verification letter, which can be printed from your online account through ERB. You're going to need identification. You can use something like a birth certificate, passport, social security card, school ID. Some of our upper school applicants, if you're applying to a higher grade, might also have a driver's license, but something that shows who you are. You want to bring 4 number 2 pencils with good erasers. You're also going to need 2 pens with blue or black ink for the writing section. And then finally, you're definitely going to want to bring water and a snack. This has to be in a clear container. It's a long test, so you will want something to drink and something to eat to sort of, keep your energy up throughout the test. Just as important, know what you should not bring. So you shouldn't bring any electronics. So no calculators, no cell phones, no fitness tracker bands, No media players, no watches. Don't bring personal items such as backpacks, bags, and purses. Hats, don't want to bring hats. Large jewelry, other items. Don't bring notes or paper, mechanical pencils, books, rulers, etc. If you're testing at home, you're going to want to make sure you have a quiet space with a desk or table. A computer or laptop with a webcam and reliable internet access, identification, scratch paper, and a black or blue ink pen, as well as water and a snack in a clear container. Okay, so on the actual day of the test, it's really important to wake up on time. Definitely don't want to be rushed, so wake up on time. You want to eat a good breakfast because you don't want to get hungry and crash in the middle of the test. You want to grab everything you need. So hopefully you've set that out the night before the test, but make sure you grab everything you need. Basically, you don't want to be stressed or rushed at all on test day. And you want to head to the test center early. Just, get there early so that you're not rushing, so that you can go into the test calmly. Finally, don't try to do any last minute practice on the day of the test. Don't cram the stuff in. It's usually quite counterproductive. So just go in and be confident in what you know, and try to relax a bit. All right, so now we're going to get to some of your questions. So yes, there is a method to effectively flag or mark a skipped question on the online version of the test. So you can do that. That is built into it. So you will be able to go back and do questions. So that applies to. I was speaking, of course, about like circling things in your test booklet. That obviously is more for the paper test, but there is certainly a method to mark a question to review and to skip. So you have to do each section within a limited time. So, and I know, so the question is, does it require everyone to finish each section within the limited time, or if all sections are done within 2 hours, is it fine? So you have time limits for each section. So unfortunately, you can't borrow time from one section to the other. So this was always much to my dismay, because when I was taking tests, I happen to be very fast at reading sections, and I am slower on the math sections. So I was always done with reading sections early and always lagging behind on the math sections. So unfortunately, though, you can't borrow time. So you have to do each section within the allotted time. I will be, and I'll discuss this at the end, I am going to be sending out a copy of our prep guide along with the recording of this webinar. So you'll be able to see sort of how much time you have for each section. That does sort of give an overview and when the breaks are. So that is certainly something I'd recommend reviewing. Okay, so we have someone asking if there's a screen that asks for school codes to send the scores right after the test. So you can specify which schools receive the scores when you register for the test. So to do that, you're going to want to log into the ERB site, and you're going to want to log into the ERB site and specify and you can specify which schools you do. Generally, we don't recommend that you do that before you see the scores, but if you have a very tight turnaround and you're not going to take the test again, this is your one time to send the scores, you can go ahead and specify that ahead of time, and the schools will automatically receive your scores. So that would be through your parent account on erblearn.org. Okay, so now we have some questions about the scratch paper at the testing center. I will I will confirm this, but I do believe they provide that there. So no need to bring a bunch of paper, but I just say double check with your testing center. Obviously you're going to be providing your own scratch paper per their regulations if you're taking it at home, but the regulations about scratch paper are a little different for the on-site test. So I would say double check with your testing center, but they're most likely going to be providing that there. So and I can confirm as well. I think we have time for. We have one question that is a more involved answer. So if I'm not answering your question, I am going to follow up with you via email. So the other question we have is about sort of what happens if you run into technical difficulties during your test. Now, there are some guidelines on the ERB site for what happens if you encounter technical difficulties during those tests. I can certainly add that to the email of resources I'm going to send out after the webinar, so you can review sort of what's required for the at-home thing. So if you're looking at for what happens when your internet drops out, that guideline, those guidelines from ERB should answer that. So if that's your question that I just answered, look for that information in the follow-up email after the webinar, which I will most likely be sending out tomorrow. So check your email then. And however, if you don't see that in your inbox, you can always reach out to us. We're here 7 days a week. You can contact us at support@testinnovators.com. And our phone number is 1-800-280-1857. Definitely check out our free ISEE prep guides. They'll have everything you need to know about the test, as well as some tips and strategies for each section. So this is one of the things I'll be sending out in the follow-up email from this webinar. So please visit our site at ISEEpracticetest.com. You can check out our preparation materials, as well as the various information we have about the test. So thank you all so much for coming. Again, if I didn't answer your question in the today live, I will be following up via email. So look out for an email from us. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, once again, if I didn't answer your question, so I will follow up separately via email. Thank you so much and have a lovely evening. Bye now.